Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and today we're going to be discussing how we can enhance and optimize our entity framework code. We're going to be doing some optimization on queries. We're going to be seeing a query time go down from 9.5 seconds to 0.5 seconds. That's a 95% improvement. We're going to be seeing how we can protect ourselves from failed updates to have data consistency and data integrity. If you'd like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. As well, if you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. With that said, grab your cup of coffee and let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking an application that we have built before. I'm going to be linking it here somewhere where you can actually go through the video if you want, or you can follow along with me with your own application. So the first step is we're going to see how we can actually configure entity framework inside our program.cs. And then we're going to be starting adding new entities and see how we can implement some optimization on those new entities as we go. And then we're going to be comparing those entities to what we have built previously within that application so we can see the difference that we can have there. So first things first, let us go to our source code. And here what I want to do is, first of all, I want to actually have an additional configuration for my application DB context. So currently, what I'm using here, I have my application DB context, which we have created previously. So if I go here, we can see it's a simple DB context where we have two entities, one called drivers, the other one called achievements. And basically I have relationship between those two tables. So every driver has an achievement, and it's a pretty straightforward approach. And what we're doing also is we are using SQLite as our database. So if you're using SQL Server or using Postgres, there's different configuration that you might utilize. This will apply mostly on all of them, but there is some additional aspect that you can, for example, apply to SQL Server, which is not available on SQLite. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to start extending this. We want to have a bit more control over the configuration that we want to have here. So what I want to do is I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to have the capability here is, instead of having one single configuration, is have additional configuration. And the first thing that I want is I'm going to put back the use SQLite connection, but I want to add an additional action here. So this additional action will give me the capability of adding more control over this. So one of the main things that I would like to add here is the ability to do a retry. And here basically, the command timeout. And this command timeout here will give me the capabilities of how long would that command actually run before it actually times out. So let's say the database is under a lot of pressure and there's a lot of requests coming in. And for example, certain requests might take up to 10 seconds, 15 seconds, but for example, because there's heavy load, the request can take 40 seconds to be responded from our database. So what I want to do here is I want to set a time where whenever there is a threshold, so in this case 30 seconds, whenever a request is above that threshold, I directly get a timeout. So basically, first of all, I preserve the connections within my application so it does not exceed that threshold, and basically I don't preserve resources on my applications which I'm not going to be utilizing. As well, on top of that, I'll be able to have a much more better retry policy from my application side to my database, and I'll decrease the load of my database, so I'll be able to answer the other requests which has coming in way more faster, and I will have much more control on that performance. So this is one of the main things that I would like to add, which is the timeout. If you want to take a look at the other capabilities, we can see here that we can say we have execution strategy, we have migration information, migration assembly, and configuring the history table that we might use with EFCore. There's a lot of stuff that we can actually utilize, but the one thing that I want to utilize here is the action. So once I have specified the connection string for my SQLite and the timeout that I would like to utilize within my database, the other item that I would like to do is I want to enable additional errors. So if I click on types on option and I type on enable detailed error, and I want to make this true, So basically right now, if there is any types of error when it comes to my entity framework, or whenever I'm executing any types of request, I'll be able to see much more in-depth details of the error. I'll be able to understand how this is going on. And this is really beneficial if, for example, I'm trying to debug a problem, if I'm trying to execute what's going on, understand what's going on within an execution. So enabling this detailed error is really beneficial, but this should not be enabled when it comes to production environment, because it might give a lot of different information about my database. So we really need to be very careful when to enable this. And the last one that I would like to enable here is options.enable sensitive data logging. Again, this will also provide a lot of valuable information when it comes to actually logging my queries and actually understand what's going on in case there's any problem. And if we hover on top of that, we can see that it will enable us to have a detailed data exception of the messages and the logging. It will basically include all of the values and the properties. So as you can imagine, those values might include a lot of PII information. It might include a lot of sensitive data. It can include, for example, financial data. So we need to make sure that we are not enabling it with any production environment, and we'll only enable it for debugging purposes. So now that I have these in place and I have all of these main configuration available, if I take a look at these values that exist here, like the command timeout and basically enable details error and enable data logging, they are all hard-coded values. And if I deploy this application right now within this current state, if I want to change any of these values, what do I need to do? I need to basically redeploy this entire process all over again with this change value. So a better way to do this is basically set these information here inside a configuration, inside app settings, and anytime I want to change anything, I just update the configuration inside my app settings and it will be reflected here. So let's see how we can implement this. So if I go here to my app settings.json, I'm gonna add a database config section, and inside my config section I'm gonna have my timeout, and I'm gonna say it's gonna be equal to 30, similar to what we currently have. I'm gonna put detailed error, and I'm gonna say it's equal to true, and I'm gonna put sensitive data logging, I'm gonna say equal to true. So now what I'm doing here is I'm putting the configuration that I need for my application DB context to be directly inside my app settings. Now that I have done that, I want a way where I can actually inject this configuration into my program.cs at runtime. And this should be pretty straightforward, but let's see how we can do it. So inside my root folder, I'm going to be creating a new directory, and I'm going to call this configuration. And inside my configurations, I'm going to create a new class. And this class, I'm going to call it database config. And here, because inside my app settings, I have 3 values. So I have timeout, detailed error, and sensitive data logging. So I'm going to create 3 variables. So prop int, and the first one, it's going to be my timeout. The second one is going to be Boolean, and it is called detailed error. The third one, let's copy it directly, sensitive data logging. I'm gonna put also as Boolean. And basically right now, if I compare these two, we can see they have the exact same configuration, database config, the name of my class, and these are the 3 values, int, Boolean, which is perfect. So now that I have done this, the next step is if I go back to my program.cs, I can start adding those configurations here so they will automatically be injected. So let's see how we can do that. So the first thing is I need an instance of my DB config, database config. So I'm just going to put var db config equal new database config. Pretty straightforward. Then this is going to be the interesting part. I'm going to put builder dot configuration get section, and this section, it is called database config. And what I want to do right now is I want to bind this section to my dbconfig object. And what I'm doing basically here is I'm creating an empty instance of my configuration, and then I'm telling my builder that it needs to go into the configuration, get the value inside this section, and it needs to basically bind this data, whatever exists, to this object. So now whenever I want to access this value, I can go directly to dbconfig, and I can put dbconfig dot timeout. I'll get the value, dbconfig dot detailed error, and dbconfig dot sensitive data logging. And now, because every time I need to change anything, all I need to do is just change my app settings. I don't really need to deploy my application again. I can just change my app settings, and once I change it, it will be reflected for my application directly. And that's going to be the main key area here, is I have reduced or removed the necessity for me to redeploy the full application in order for me to deploy something. Rather, what I did here is I just enabled that the configuration will be responsible for refreshing any settings that I need within my application DB context. So now that this is done, let's try this in action. So I'm gonna run this, and we can see it's actually running. Now if I go back to Insomnia, and let's go back to my main collections here, so I can see I have all of these different endpoints that I can utilize. So if I get all drivers, I think there's only one right now, and we can see we got the information. If I wanna post a driver and I can send it, we can see it has been succeeded. Get all driver, now it should return me 2 drivers, and we can see everything is working as it should be. And that means that my configuration is actually dynamically injected through my app settings, which is what we want. So now that we know this is working, let's go back to Rider. And what I want to do right now is I want to add 2 additional objects. And this one is going to represent like events and tickets for the races. So I'm going to have an event which is going to represent the race, and I'm going to have the tickets available for them. And once I do that, what I want to do is I want to actually populate a lot of information inside my database. Like I'm going to have around 5,000 records, and we're going to be seeing how we can actually optimize queries when we're handling large set of data. So inside my Formula1.entities application, inside my DB set, I'm gonna be basically creating a new class, and this class I'm gonna call it event, and it's gonna be pretty straightforward. I'm gonna give it an ID. This is gonna be, it's gonna be int, and this is gonna be an ID. Perfect. And I'm gonna put prop string, the name of the event, and then I'm gonna put the location. And lastly, I'm gonna link it to a list of tickets. I did not create it yet, but I will create it. So public list of tickets. I'm gonna call it tickets, and get and set. And I'm gonna initialize this string.empty and equal string.empty. Okay, perfect. So now that I have this, the other object that I want to create here, it's gonna be tickets. And it's going to be pretty straightforward as well. It's going to be, first of all, the event ID. So for this, what I want to do, maybe I can inherit from the base entity just to make sure that we are mix and matching. So base entity, and the base entity, basically, if you're not aware, it will give me an ID, added date, updated date, and a status. So pretty straightforward. So here, all I want to do is I'm going to add the event ID. So prop int event ID. Then what I want to do is I want to add the string. I'm gonna just call it event. If there's any additional information that I would like to add, I'm gonna put equal string.empty. Then I'm gonna put prop date time, and this is gonna be the event date. And let's add additional stuff. So properties, I can put the double, which is going to be the price, And lastly, I'm gonna put prop string, say the ticket level. So if it's gonna be first class, second class, or basically a general attendance. Okay, so now that I have this, I basically have here my event. I have a list of tickets attached to that event, and here I have the tickets information, which attach back to the events through the event ID. I can just make this a description, or I don't really actually need this here. Let's remove it. And once I have all of that, the next step for me is I want to go to my Formula 1 data service, and what I want to do is I want to update my application DB context. And the first thing that I want to do here is I want to actually add those new entities that I have. So pretty straightforward. I'm gonna put public virtual DB set, and it's gonna be event. It's gonna have the name events, and we're gonna say get and set. Perfect. And again, the tickets public virtual DB set ticket, and it's gonna be called tickets. Perfect. Get and set. And now that I have these, the next step for me, if I scroll a bit down here, is to actually configure these. So I'm gonna utilize my model builder, and through my model builder, I'm gonna put .entity, and then I'm gonna specify my entity that I wanna configure, and in this case, it's gonna be the event. And then I'm gonna say here that entity, it's gonna be equal to, let's add now all of the configurations. The first one that I want to do is entity dot has many, and here I'm going to specify the has many of what. I'm going to say that an event has many tickets, and then I'm going to put every ticket has one event, and I'm going to specify the foreign key, and this foreign key is going to be the event ID. So here what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that I'm attaching my two objects together, and I'm gonna specify here the event ID, and once I have done that, I'm just saying that this is a required field that needs to be there. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating the connections between the events and the tickets. So I'm just saying that this entity has many tickets with one foreign key, and this foreign key is going to be the attached back to the event through the event ID. And the other item that I want to do here is I want to create a data directly inside my event. So I'm just going to create a demo event. I'm going to say it's equal to new event, and it's going to be pretty straightforward. So ID equal 1, location equals Silverstone, and Silverstone, and lastly I'm gonna put the name of the event, which is gonna be the British Grand Prix. Okay, so now that I have done that, all I'm gonna do finally is entity that has data, and I'm gonna pass the demo event. And now whenever I'm running my migration, it will be able to directly add this object for me. Perfect. Now let's go to my other object that I want to configure, and it's gonna be also quite similar. So model builder dot entity, and I'm gonna specify here that this is gonna be the ticket, and we're gonna put entity, and let's configure it. And it's gonna be mostly straightforward as well. So I don't really need to do the other configurations but to connect them, because I've already done it in the event section. So here all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a set of tickets that are gonna be available. So I'm gonna put var tickets equal new enumerable, and I'm gonna specify the range of the data that I wanna add. It's gonna be between 1 and 5,000. And I'm gonna put select. So this means that I can actually configure every single item from this 5,000 set that I want to add. I'm gonna put the ID here. I'm gonna say new ticket, and basically from there what I can do is I can just start the configuration. Let's remove this, it just needs to be here. Okay, perfect. And now let's start this configuration. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to add an ID, and because this is going to be a GUID, so I'm just going to put GUID dot new GUID. Then I want to specify the event date, or I can say event date dot UTC now dot add days. I can add in 10 days from now, for example. I can add the price, and I can say the price is going to be £100 for a ticket. And then I can put the status equal to 1, for example. Event ID is going to be equal to 1 because I added here the event ID as 1. I can, for example, add the added date, which is going to be datetime.utc now. And ticket level, I'm just going to say it is bronze. Okay, and the last thing that exists here that I can add, which is updated date. Let's make it datetime.now, just for keeping it consistent. So now that I have done that, all I need to do is just to add this. I'm going to put entity.hasData, and I'm going to pass the tickets. And that should be it. So now what I did is I created 2 objects. These objects basically have the information that I need in order for me to, whenever I do the migration, to populate directly the database and create the connections between these 2 objects. And here they're going to be playing a crucial role into trying to create queries, which is going to be mainly utilized to optimize this. So now if I want to do the migrations, I'm going to go to my terminal. I'm going to navigate, let's see, where am I here? I'm going to navigate to my Formula 1 data service. And here I'm going to put .NET, EF, add migrations. And I'm going to call it events, tickets, something like that. Oh, it's migrations add, sorry. And I need to specify the starting project, startup project. Still early in the morning, apologies. Startup project, and this is going to be formula1.api, and now this should work. We can see tickets has invalid number, so let's see this, t.myProperty. Let's verify this. So now if I take a look at this, let's see, we have entities. Oh, that's the problem. I need to put x.tickets. Now let's try this again. Okay, perfect, it worked. Now I'm gonna put .NET. Let's clear this up. .NET EF database update startup project equal / formula1.api, and now this should be successful. Perfect. So now if I double check my database, so all I'm gonna do right now is inside my Formula 1 API, there's an app.db, which is gonna be my SQLite database. I'm just gonna double click on this, and it's gonna ask me to do the configuration for it. So I'm gonna put test connection. We got it succeeded, click apply, and then click OK. Now you can see that my database is opened, and if I come here, go to main, tables, I can see that I have now my events available as well as my tickets. So let's check the events. I'm gonna put here, let's say modify table, no, added data. So see the data, we can see that one of my data here is gonna be the British Grand Prix, and it's gonna be Silverstone. Perfect. Now if I go to tickets, I think it's gonna show me the first 500. So I'm gonna click here on added data. And as you can see here, I have my ID, I have my event date, I have my event ID, and I have the price and the ticket level and the date added and updated date and the status. Okay, perfect. So now that I have everything in place, as you can see here, everything is available. And you can see here I can do pagination between 500 and then I can see from 501 to 1001, etc., etc. Perfect. So now that all of this data are available inside my code and inside my database, now it's going to take me to the next step where I'm going to actually create an endpoint, and through this endpoint I want to do updates on this data, and we're going to basically see how we can actually optimize the update functionality on 5,000 records, and we're going to be seeing how we can actually do some clever querying there in order for us to avoid having to update the 5,000 records every single one of them by utilizing or alternating solution, which basically execute a single command and updating everything at the same time. So let's see this right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my controllers, and inside my controllers I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to call this tickets controller. Perfect. And I'm gonna inherit here from controller base. So the first thing that I want to do, I'm gonna close this. I don't really need this anymore. I want to specify that this is going to be an API controller. So first of all, I'm going to specify my route. And it's going to be API/controller, and then I'm going to specify that this is an API controller. Perfect. And now I'm going to inject directly my application DB context. It's going to be protected, read only app DB context. I'm going to call it DB context. So a better way to do this is basically add this to unit of work and then try to do it from there. But for simplicity's sake, I'm taking this rule where I'm directly injecting my DB context inside my controller. Now I want to have my constructor, and I want to inject this through my constructor. So here it will be something like this. Underscore DB context equal DB context. Now that has been initialized. So first thing that I want to do is I want to create my HTTP GET. And this should basically able to display all of the tickets that I have. So public async task iAction result. And here I'm going to call it get all tickets. And here I'm going to put var tickets equal await underscore DB context dot events dot include, and I'm going to include the tickets. Let's put this on a new line. And lastly, I'm gonna put dot to list async. And I'm just gonna return OK with tickets. Perfect. So that's gonna be my first endpoint. And the second endpoint that I wanna do is gonna be an update. So this one's going to be straightforward as well, because all I'm going to do is going to take the rest. I'm going to execute a command where I'm updating all of these tickets simultaneously. So let's say there is a price inflation and I want to change or update the prices of my tickets by, let's say, 20%. So I don't want to go basically update one by one. I'm just going to do batch updates. It's not a good idea to do batch update, but this is again a demo scenario. So here what I want to do is I'm going to put HTTP put. And then I'm gonna put here put async task iAction result update ticket prices, and I'm gonna use an int as an event ID. And what I want to do here is first of all get my event. So I'm gonna put var main event equal await underscore DB context dot events dot include. I'm gonna get all of the tickets, and then I'm gonna put dot first or default async, and I'm gonna pass my query that the event ID must match the ID that I have equal event ID. So now within this query that I currently have here, is all I'm doing is I'm making sure I'm getting all of the events with their tickets, and basically I'm making sure that the event ID match whatever I have inside my parameters, my query string. And then what I want to do, I'm going to say if main event equal null, I'm going to return a not found. As simple as that. Else what I want to do is I want to do a for each on every single item inside my ticket list. So I'm going to put here ticket inside my main event dot tickets, and I'm going to put ticket dot price equal, it's going to be multiplication by 1.2, so it's going to be 20%, and I'm going to put ticket dot updated date equal date time dot UTC now. And again, what I want to do here is once I do this, I want to update my main event. I can say, for example, I'm going to update the location just to make sure that we're updating both of them at the same time. So I'm going to put main event dot location, and I'm just going to make it like this. I can do whatever I want, but this is a very simplistic one. I can say at, I'm going to add the dates of now, so I'm going to put date time dot UTC now dot milliseconds, so that now every time I update, I'll update the location by with an additional random number at the end. So once I have done all of this, I'm going to put await underscore db context to save changes async, and I'm going to return a no content. Perfect. So now this is my update statement, and if we take a look at it as from the first glance, we can see it is a quite normal approach when handling a query. We get the values that we want from the database, we execute the update logic that we want, and then once we execute this update logic, we actually save those changes to the database. So let's see what's going to happen here. I'm going to run my application. Now it's running. I'm going to go back to Insomnia. And I have it here. So right now I'm going to get all tickets. So I'm just going to request it again. And we can see here I got all of the tickets that exists. So it's roughly around 5,000 records, which is great. And we can see we got this in 1.67 seconds. And now it's caching it, so we got it in way more faster. And now I have here an update ticket query where basically I'm sending the event ID, and basically once I click on this, let us just clear this up so we're able to see, clear everything. So right now, if I send it for the first time, let's see how much time this will take. So it's executing, and we can see it is working. And while this is working, I want to go back here and look at the console. We can see all of the update statement is running, and we can see it took 9.11 seconds to update 5,000 records inside my database. Actually, it's going to be 5,001, which is going to be the event table. And all of this has been updated successfully. So now if I go back to my main application database and I open up my tickets table, modified edit data, and if I go to prices, we can see the price has went up to 120. So everything is actually executing successfully. And if I do all ticket and I get request again, so we need to make sure the prices here is updated. So if I do send, we can see the price ticket has been updated successfully, and the event name now has a random the event location has now a random milliseconds attached to it. So this is all nice and well, but the only problem that I have is I cannot have a query running for 9.11 seconds, which is crazy if it's in a real life scenario. So what I want to do is I want to try to have some way where I can actually update all of my records that I need within a single query, rather than basically having almost 5,000 query here running all at the same time in order for me to update all of these different values. Because basically, if we do a count of all of this, we're going to be seeing 5,000 entity framework query popping up. That's going to update every single item inside my database. So let's see how we can update that. Going back to my controller, I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna update this right now. Let's close this as well. So all I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna comment this out, so just we can keep it there for comparison. And here, what we're doing is we're going a for each on all. What I want to do is I want to utilize SQL instead of utilizing entity framework. So in order for me to do that, I'm gonna put await underscore db context dot database dot execute SQL interpolated async. And then what I want to do here is I want to use string concatenation so I can pass the parameter dynamically. And let me just put a semicolon at the end. And here what I want to do is I want to put update tickets, and I'm going to put set price equal price multiply by 1.2, where event ID is equal to the event ID that I have, which is pretty straightforward. So now basically what I did is I replaced looping through the 5,000 element tickets that I have and updating it one by one. To updating it here, I can even set the date time. So I forgot about it. I'm gonna put updated date equal date time dot UTC now. Okay. So now that I have this, let's see what happened now when I want to execute it. I'm going to stop my application. I'm going to run it in the debugger again. Succeeded. Now I'm going to go back to Insomnia, and I want to basically first get all tickets just to make sure that's working still. Perfect, I got it all. And now if I go back here and I execute this here with last time, we have 9.11 seconds. So now let's see this one, how much it's gonna take. We can see it went down from 9.11 seconds to 515 milliseconds. And we can see here that instead of having 5,000 query on the database, all I do is I have one single query to update it, and that was it. I'm not relying on entity framework to do all of the update manually one by one, where basically I utilized SQL in its place in order for me to be able to do this update. And basically this SQL statement that I have is pretty straightforward. All I'm doing again is just taking the value and updating it manually. So instead of looping through 5,000 records in order for me to update them one by one, I'm updating it all at the same time. And if I go back to Insomnia and I do all tickets, now we should be able to see that this price has went up again because we have updated by 20%, and we can see the price went up again, and now we can see also that the location has been updated again. Perfect. So now this is one of the greatest improvement that we have done so far, but this will leave me with another problem. And this problem that I currently have is what happened if, for example, I'm running this, I have updated my database, but for some reason the other update failed. So if that happens, and if one of them succeeds, another one failed, because here I'm utilizing SQLite, this will succeed and be implemented on the database, while if this failed, it will be not be committed. So I have inconsistency on my data. And here what I can do is I can utilize another feature, which is going to be called the trigger transactions, that's going to allow me to prevent this. So let's see how we can actually utilize it. So now what we want to do here is, in order for us to avoid that inconsistencies, we need to add await underscore db context dot database dot begin transaction async. And this basically means that whatever items that currently gonna pass after the start of the transaction, it will not be actually committed to the database until every single one of them is successful. So now that we have done that, now that the transaction has begun, we need to end the transaction. So I'm going to put await underscore db context dot database dot commit transaction async. And this means basically that whatever database queries that we do between these two lines, begin and commit transactions, as long as every single one of them is successful, we're going to be committing them to the database. If any of them failed, none of them will be committed to the database, even if this one is going to be SQL and the other one is going to be utilizing entity framework. And we need to make sure exactly what we need to make sure that both of them are successful in order for us to do this, because this will save us from corrupting the data, and this will allow us to have consistent data across our application. So now if I run this again, and we go back to Insomnia, and let's try getting all tickets now. Perfect, we got all tickets. Now if I'm gonna update it, let's take a look at the time. 443, 285, 2979, etc, etc. And now if I go back here and do get all tickets, now we should see the price goes up again, and we can see the price went up and went up. And now if I run this again, send 285, if I click on this, we can see the price went up again and again. So all of this means that once we have this safety in place, we can execute as many queries as we want without the feeling that something's gonna fail and we're gonna have corrupt data. As well, we can see here by actually utilizing SQL rather than relying on entity framework to do an update, how we have decreased the time of our query from 9.2 seconds to almost half a second, and that's a big improvement. So with that said, this is gonna be the end of the video. If you have any questions, or if there is anything not clear, please let me know. I'll make sure to cover it in more details. If you have more topics that you would like me to cover within entity framework, please let me know, and I'll make sure to also cover it. Thank you very much for watching, and if you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. If you'd like access to the source code, please go to Patreon, and have a great day, and thank you very much.